Beer to Whiskey Clan. I'm your host, Russ Heaps, and today in my never-ending effort to spread the gospel of good taste, I find myself in Austin, Texas at Hops and Grain Brewing. And we're going to be here, we're going to talk a little bit about the brewery, we're going to talk about the beer, we're going to talk a little bit about the people involved. But first I have a little business to attend to. This is my beer slurping co-conspirator on this segment. It's Randy Porter, and he and I go back about 47 or 48 years. We're fraternity brothers and have remained good friends over the years. But anyway, he's going to be helping me out here. And before I introduce you to the rest of the panel, Randy, what do we want the folks to do?
We want them to like and subscribe.
That's it. That's it. That's all you got to do. Take a look down at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a thumbs up. If you like what you're seeing, click on that. At the end of the video, there's an opportunity where you can click on a couple of other videos if you want to watch some more. But there's also a round beer to whiskey icon that you can click on and be all subscribed to us. A new video goes live every Thursday at noon East Coast time. And with that out of the way, I have with us, I've got the owner of Hops and Grain, Josh Hare. It's not that difficult. It is for me, Josh Hare. And he's the owner and founder. And sitting next to him we have Jonathan Flores. And basically I'm just going to call you Flo.
Yeah, that works for me.
There you go. I didn't just make that up, that's what they call them. But with that, tell me a little bit how things got started here, Josh. How did this come to be?
Yeah, no, great question. You know, here in right now, at least, we're having our one probably cold snap of the year in Austin, Texas. But I moved here from Boulder, Colorado in 2005. Not with plans to open a brewery, but more plans to work in the running specialty industry on the retail side, as well as racing bikes and racing triathlon. But I was always a beer drinker, and Boulder's an incredible scene, obviously,
yes,
for exercise and beer drinking. But when I moved down here, I think I had expected to see much more of a beer scene in 2005 than I saw when I came here. My background is in biology. I've homebrewed a little bit, mainly, I jokingly say out of necessity, but I went to a private university that didn't allow alcohol consumption. And so my buddies and I, as young, curious 19-year-olds, figured out you could buy all the ingredients without being 21. So
sort of like bomb making.
Exactly, right.
All right.
But yeah, kind of, from there, here in Austin, I really found an incredible community. A lot of folks that really cared about local products. Food and drink and music were, part of everyone's weekend to-do list. And I kind of fell in love with the city. Didn't really intend on staying here, but fell in love with the city and started to dig around on the regulatory structure and, why there wasn't, much in the brewing scene here outside of kind of your bigger real ale, St. Arnold, Live Oak. There were a few breweries established, but not the scene that I was used to. But what I really wanted to do was create an environment for a workplace that really, tried to promote growth. I had been in a bunch of different industries, worked a bunch of different jobs, and never found myself in a place that I really felt like my opinion was paid much attention to, or that I had a lot of opportunity. And so I really wanted to build a business that offered that. And beer was always the thing that I loved for its ability to bring people together and spark conversation. And it's hard to sit with somebody and drink a beer and not say something,
Right.
So I just loved the industry and dug in a little bit and decided to leave my career in the running specialty industry and dove headfirst into beer.
So when did you actually open this place?
So we just celebrated our 7-year anniversary.
Oh, wow.
So brewed our first batch of beer in October of 2011.
Was this the original space, or have you guys?
This building, yes. We started out with a small 2,800 square foot space, which in my financial model was going to support us to growing statewide distribution. And about 8 months into that, we had gone through our first expansion and doubled our square footage. And we now occupy 10,000 square feet. We've been in the same building though since 2011.
In the expansion, has that What are you up to in terms of your annual production? How many barrels?
So last year, 2017, we did about 8,000 barrels, which is about all that this facility can handle. So we'll be right about the same this year. We have just now, really for the first time, made a big expansion in our distribution ahead of a new production facility that we're almost completed down in San Marcos, so about 30 minutes south of here, which will expand our production capacity, not only from a volume standpoint, but also just an efficiency standpoint. Quality of life for our staff will be much higher there, a lot less of the manual aspects and much more, not fully automated, but just much more automation there. But yeah, we've grown all of that time just distributing in Austin. So we sold all 8,000 of those barrels in 2017, really just right here in Austin. And San Antonio was our first big expansion.
Big
so,
move.
Yeah.
Big move to take over the world.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, you guys are canning some things. Are those basically your year-round beers that you're canning?
We do, yeah. We have 6 beers that we do year-round. These 3 that I kind of have sitting in front of us are really they make up about 80% of the beers that we produce. And we've been canning since day one. That was always a big piece of my, I'm very active in, outdoor. I fly fish. I love to backpack, love to ride bikes, love to run, hike. And I love to drink beer around a lot of those activities. And so bottles weren't even an option for me, regardless of the,
Right.
The environmental aspects of it, but it was more portability and accessibility to beer. But yeah, these 3 are definitely the heavy hitters in our portfolio.
Flo, what do you do here exactly?
I run most of our cellar operations. I deal with our centrifuge, clean tanks, deal with yeast, pretty much everything but brewing and packaging. I've done a little bit of brewing here, but most of my work consists of maintaining our beer clarity, keeping our beers hazy and clean.
Something that I always ask, because I think it's kind of fun to find this out. Both of you guys, what turned you on to craft beer? What got you off Coors Light or Bud Light or whatever and got you into craft?
For me, funny, it was during my early 20s, touring around the country, following live music. So Fish and String Cheese Incident and numerous other bands kind of in that bluegrass jam band genre. My buddies and I in college, at least, were all Miller High Life was kind of what we drank. That was what we always had available in the fridge. And then we homebrewed, so we kind of we would have our high strength stuff that we made. But Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, much like most folks of my generation, that I'm in my late 30s now. That was kind of my introduction to a new realm of flavor that had some at least from that kind of music scene, it had some similar aromas. But more than anything, it was cool. It was something we found that wasn't everywhere. It was unique, and a lot of folks in the parking lot always had Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, and that was kind of my not really aha moment, but it was just like, man, this is all right.
Yeah,
this is good.
Beer can taste good.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Flo, what was your introduction?
I would have to say when I moved up here, being around my older brother. Just trying new stuff out. I think my first beer that I tried outside of like a just normal lager was a Fat Tire, New Belgium's Fat Tire, and that just like was an explosion of flavor and taste that I've never had before, and that definitely put me out and ventured out into like trying other new stuff. And I think I was really into the darker like ambers and stouts, and as I got older, I started dialing back and getting into more of the IPAs and lager. Back, I guess. Kind of went full circle, because now I'm back to the lagers for sure.
You guys called out the 2 beers that if I was keeping track, if I tallied as many times as I've asked that question, the 2 breweries and the 2 beers that are mentioned, those are the beers in the breweries. It's just really incredible, particularly west of the Mississippi. That's
sure.
I mean, it's almost always those 2 west of the Mississippi.
Sunshine Wheat was one too that I remember always seeing that around from New Belgium, and I don't even know if that's still a beer that they make anymore. But I remember that, and obviously Blue Moon was was really big. It still is, but
Sunshine Wheat. Somebody else brought that up on another shoot, and I think maybe they named it something else. I think maybe it has evolved into something else.
Yeah.
I have been wrong before. But I think that was part of a story that somebody else brought up. And ports. What was yours? I don't even know.
I think the first beer that I had outside of your normal Budweisers that really turned me on was my father-in-law at the time introduced me to Samuel Smith. It was an English beer. And they have several different, styles, and I can't remember exactly which one it was, but I thought, man, this is fabulous. And then after that, then Great Lakes Brewing or Brewery up in Cleveland they've kind of become a regional or craft beer, and they had a beer called Dortmunder Gold. And I really fell in love with that. So then from then on, it was always a constant search to find something else to drink.
Right. We just had some machinery kicked on. They're actually they haven't opened the tap room yet today, but they are busy making more beer.
One question I have for you, Josh, is when you decided to jump in and do this, how did you finance this? Was it all self-funded? Did you go out and borrow money from friends and relatives? How did you get this whole thing started financially?
Yeah, it's a good question, and one that we continue to look at as we grow. But so when I first kind of got this idea was 2009, right? Perfect time to approach a bank about starting a risky venture in an industry that wasn't really yet incredibly established.
You want to do what? You're how old? You want to do what?
Right. So I will never forget that. I was just about to turn 30. And sit down across the table from the president of lending, I guess, at this local bank, and she kind of looked through my business plan, and here I am, just super excited about what I'm trying to do.
Sure.
And she just kind of looked at it and she was like, no, it's not going to be anything that we're going to be able to work with you on. And I was like, well, but you got to look at, the equipment, the used value right now is almost more than new value if you look at the opportunity cost. And she's like, yeah, but I have no desire to own your equipment. That's collateral. That is not anything. When you go belly up,
which I'm sure you will.
Exactly. That's basically what she was saying. And that was the first realization of man, wow, okay, so failure is maybe potentially something that could happen. But no, we started out, it's funny now, I was talking to a good friend about, our expansion to San Marcos and that, total project cost and what I encourage people to raise if they're trying to open a brewery now. We started on $250,000. All raised from friends and family, and that barely gets you a 1,000 square foot nano brewery at this point. But yeah, we were all funded by private investment. Have since gone more the traditional debt route as we've grown and been able to show some good sales history. We did a very unique fundraising for our San Marcos brewery back when the Jobs Act was passed. I guess in 2015 that was, maybe earlier than that. Regulation crowdfunding was kind of a piece that the SEC had been entertaining for a while to allow a little bit more of a structured investment beyond like a Kickstarter, something that, is actually you pay back in money, not in,
right.
custom gear or whatever. And so we were the first brewery to launch as a regulation crowdfunding fundraise. And the SEC limits you to $1 million raised, per round. We raised that in just under 3 months. And that was a big chunk of what enabled us to really, make the leap and open a bigger facility. So we've done a little bit of everything in terms of financing, but the initial funds we raised, that capital came from friends and family.
Anybody who wants to start a new business, if you don't have a track record, it's tough to find funding.
Even now, when banks are much more friendly to lending, it's still tough. You have to, you've got to have a pretty sound case on how you're going to succeed.
A little earlier, you mentioned some other breweries in the area, St. Arnold, which I actually did a segment on back in February. Are there any breweries that you have a relationship in terms of doing collaborations or anything like that?
The closest relationships that I have with breweries here, so, St. Arnold and Real Ale have always been, incredible stewards of the industry. And, I've had the good fortune to serve on the board of directors for our Texas Craft Brewers Guild with Brock Wagner. I've gotten to know him very well. And we have a great relationship with both of those breweries. And they've been an incredible wealth of knowledge for us as we've grown. Here locally, though, Pint House Pizza and Austin Beer Works are definitely our, for me as a business owner and brewer, they're my tightest friends. That we do a collaboration with Pint House every year called Peach of a Pale, which kind of started out. Joe and I both came from Colorado. He came down to brew for Pint House. obviously I came down for other reasons, but we did our first collaboration using peaches from Colorado. So that was kind of that, that connection back. So it's a big hop forward pale ale with peaches added to it. But the three of us, Joe there, the brewer, and then Will Golden, who is one of the owners of Austin Beer Works, and myself, we do a round table just about every month where we kind of sit down and dissect each other's beers, talk about what we're working on in a very, we don't talk about that to other people what we're doing, but it's kind of an open platform for us to get critical feedback that we wouldn't otherwise get, because most people just like drinking beer, and so it's hard to find a customer that's really going to like break down like, what were you going for here with this, or so that's kind of a time for us to sit down and like all shields are off, and we're we're not going to get offended by what anyone says, but we're also pushing each other to to innovate and be better.
I didn't even ask you, are you acting as the head brewer, or do you have somebody else who does that?
So my role now is it encompasses a lot of different things, but on the brand building and recipe development and product creation standpoint, I still oversee all of that. So we do have a pilot system here, so it's a 3-barrel system with some 7-barrel tanks that Flo has been able to create some beers on, and that's kind of a place that we really like to give brewers, almost free reign. I still have to kind of check off on the recipe and make sure we're not going too far outside the bounds of what our brand is. But as far as the beers that we produce year-round, that we brew on our main brew house, those recipes are written by me with a lot of feedback from staff. We're in no means do we operate in a vacuum. Our sales and marketing team brings feedback to us, even for small tweaks, to some of the dry hopping, or, we focus around lagers and hop forward beers are kind of the styles that we make and drink the most of. But one area that we've never really explored, we do a Baltic porter, right? So, being focused on lagers, that's been a fun style for us, but we've really never gone down the kind of the stout, darker beer, brown ales, ambers, stouts, porters. That's an area that, for me, it's not a beer style that I drink a lot of. And as a business owner, sometimes it's hard to give up things. We do have one of our full-time brewers. That's pretty much all he wants to drink.
Right.
And so over the past couple of years, he's been creating some recipes for imperial stouts and stuff like that. Austin's a tough market for that, obviously, because it's hot 9 months out of the year. But it is still a style that we've yet to explore, but I'm excited. This new facility will give us a lot of flexibility in working on some other recipes. Right now, we've just been trying to keep up with what's going on with the beers that we already have. So,
do you feature anybody else's beers on your taps at all?
We do, yeah. We keep a couple of tap handles that we rotate through. Generally, it's going to be something from Pine House. We do St. Arnold beers here. We work with the same wholesaler here as St. Arnold, so we do buy some beers from them. Right now, we've got a tap on from Last Stand, which is another local brewery here that we're good friends with. And then we also, we do keep, we sell Coors Banquet beer stubby bottles and Miller High Life ponies that we keep down in the bottom corner of the fridge for us sometimes, as well as exactly.
I've got a good friend down in Florida who's sat in on a couple of these with me, and that was always his beer back in the day when you couldn't really get much in the way of craft.
Yeah.
And boy, I give it to him constantly over that.
The story of Banquet beer is so fun too, because it was the original craft. It was bootlegged across state lines when they weren't distributing nationwide, and it's got such a cool history. And that beer, amongst all of the kind of macro brands, that's the one that, for me at least, I can still find a real soft spot, and in my heart for that beer, because it still represents a lot of what all of us are trying to do without it doesn't have the massive marketing budgets and fun beer.
So what do we have in front of us here?
Yeah, we've got so kind of walk you from, I guess, my left to right, Hayes County, which is our double IPA.
Okay.
It is a beer that is very hop forward. I think all in it's a little over 5 pounds per barrel. Across the dry hopping and hot side, but very expressive in ways that are not, traditionally known as like your West Coast IPA. So definitely leaning more towards the citrus, tropical, stone fruit, a lot of those notes. Very low in bitterness, so it's kind of right around like 40 IBU, just enough to keep the sweetness from being too cloying. Not necessarily, it is in that kind of hazy IPA, New England IPA style, but it is centrifuged. So this is a beer that, for us, Flo didn't give himself enough credit there, but he really oversees, one of the most important parts of the brewery, which is, as brewers we make wort, but in the cellar is where fermentation happens, and that's where good beer is made, and that's where clean beer is made, and the management and oversight of that is, it's one of the most important jobs in a brewery, and our centrifuge enables us to produce beers at the clarity or colloidal haze that we want, while still keeping them shelf stable. We don't want to put beers out on the market that are going to stale in a week or two, because we do distribute our beer, and so we need to be good stewards and partners with our wholesalers, as well as our customers out in the market. We don't want someone buying a beer that's 2 weeks old and it's tasting like cardboard. So managing dissolved oxygen, managing the centrifuge, the cellar, harvesting yeast, transfers, all of that stuff that's a huge piece. And Hays County that one took the longest for us to go to market with, because it was the hardest one to create stable. Keeping that haze in there, using a lot of, of those adjuncts like oats and wheat that have a lot of protein, things that oxidize much faster, and then just that large of a hop load, that beer it's very fickle. So, but it's been a lot of fun for us to produce here. Then in the middle is our flagship, the one they call Zoe. It's a pale lager. It's the one that we've been making the longest of our year-round beers, and it continues to be about 40% of our sales year over year. Just a solid, very lightly hopped, kind of German-style pale lager. So a little bit of citrus. But we always talk about, or at least I like to talk about, we try to make beers that pair well with the rest of the six-pack. And this beer is kind of the epitome of that. Like, this is a beer made for drinking, made for sitting down, on the river or wherever, and kind of
it's very crisp and clean.
having a few of them. Yeah.
And what's the alcohol?
5%.
5%.
Yeah. And then the final one is our Pale Mosaic. We call it an IPA. It's right at 6%, so it's on the lower end of alcohol strength for an IPA, but very big and hop forward. Showcases predominantly Mosaic hops, but there are other varieties layered in there. Mosaic is, I think it's about 60% roughly of the dry hopping, but definitely for fans of that hop variety, that kind of fun tropical blueberry with a hint of, kind of the earthy, dank character that you expect from those hops. We feel like it's a really nice showcase of what the farmers are trying to produce for us, which is great hops.
So did I put these in the correct order? I mixed
yes,
them up.
you got them. Yep, you got them now. Yeah.
All right.
This definitely has a grapefruit kind of flavor to
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And there's a good chunk of nugget hops in there as well, which is kind of an older, old school hop. I guess I say old school. It's, at least for the last 3 or 4 years, nugget is not talked about very often. But that to me is where a lot of that really nice, deep grapefruit comes from. Fun beer. This is probably the one that I drink outside of the brewery. This is the one that I drink the most. And Hays County is 8.2%, and it's a sneaky.
That's this.
No, the one that you.
Oh, that's
yep,
the one
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
This is Hays County here?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, 8.2.
It does not drink like.
Not at all. That is extraordinary.
Yeah.
So it's fun. Water chemistry has been a big piece of developing that beer too. Generally you'll see recipes if you're looking at the salt profile, or from a calcium and sulfate chloride standpoint. Sulfate to chloride is generally in the 3 to 4 to 1 ratio. This is completely flip flop of that. It's almost solely calcium chloride, very little sulfate, which was the traditional. The conventional wisdom of calcium sulfate or gypsum was that that's what you use in hoppy beers because it helps bring out that bitterness and the sharpness and crispness. But trying to make this beer super soft and hide some of the alcohol sweetness while still keeping it, it's a big beer, but we didn't want it to drink like a big beer. It's been one that we continue to tweak almost every batch. But
I am really impressed with that. That
Thanks.
is, and I fall on the side of your guy who likes browns and porters and stouts, and that's kind of what I drink a lot of. But I'm smitten with this. This is pretty good.
Thanks.
It's pretty good stuff.
And it's English yeast, which you probably definitely for most of those styles of beer, English brown ales, especially like Sam Smith. I used to drink was it Tatty Porter? Was that one?
Yeah. Yep.
I used to drink a lot of that one. But it's a fun yeast, very expressive on the kind of fruity estery side. So yeah, fun beer. Glad you enjoy it.
Flo, is there anything is there a beer that you've been wanting to brew that you've been bugging him about? And
Yeah, absolutely. We made, I want to say a few months back, or during the summertime, we made a Goza. I've been a big fan of Gozas for quite some time now.
And that's odd for a guy who came from a stout, from
Yeah.
stouts.
My palate's been all over the place. I guess it's part of growing up, right?
Yeah.
But I got to a point where I started liking not necessarily like overly sour beers or like just like super high in acidity. So that's why I think I came to love the Goza style. It's has like a nice little salinity to it, it's light and tart, and it's not overly sour. And I think it's something that you can enjoy, on a hot sunny day and still feel like you're getting refreshed.
Yeah.
We made a pink guava Goza during the summertime, and it came out way better than I expected. And for like a cellarman, I don't typically brew beers, but I came up with a recipe and was approved, and it ended up being, like I said, way better than I expected. And
Did it get on a tap here?
yeah, we put it on the top.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it flew
Good for you.
when it was gone, and I feel like it lasted maybe a week. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a hit for sure.
Definitely something I'm hoping we get to dabble back into in the
Well,
future.
it sounds like you have a fan here, so that would be my impression. Are you guys doing any barrel aging? Are you doing anything in wood at all?
You know, we do. We've been, actually, it's interesting. In this kind of, the story of my life goes back to not having enough space in here.
Right.
Like every piece of our expansion has always been like, oh, this will be plenty of space, and then it's gone in,
Yeah.
3 months. But we have, since day one, we've had a barrel aging program. It's never been as big as I've wanted it to be, again, due to lack of space, but both on the clean, spirit and wine barrel aged side, as well as a wild and sour program that we have. We have a third facility just a little bit east of here, out on some land. It's got about 6 acres and a fairly big warehouse that's been used for storage, but the long-term goal with that was to always put a tasting room out there and really start expanding our wood program, especially the sour and wild side. And so we do, we release beers, again, not as often as I'd like, but, we try to keep something on, at least maybe quarterly or sometimes more frequent, sometimes not. But our base, wild and sour program is all centered around the same Saison recipe that then goes into, we've got a couple of oak foeders, large oak tanks. We have some puncheons, which are about, 500 liter, as well as just your standard 220 liter wine barrels. And we have some that are fruited, some that are, bacteria and wild yeast, some that are just wild yeast. That program has been building over probably 5 years, and is getting to the point now where we've been able to release some really fun stuff. And then on my passion for barrel aging is definitely on the wild and sour program, but as soon as we get this new facility open, the clean barrel aging program, I mentioned one of our brewers who really loves dark beers, also really loves barrel-aged beers, as well as, I think a good number of our staff. So I'll be able to kind of hand off some of those projects, on the clean barrel aging side to them and let them kind of run free with that.
Is there anything, particularly in your year-round beers, is there anything that you guys just kind of got a wild idea and you thought it was going to be a one-off and it got so popular you've had to make it all the time now?
Yeah, we have, and it's called river beer. So it was a while back. We just used to make a lager, an adjunct lager. So it's got corn and Pilsner malt. We just called it beer, and it was just kind of our tap room, because we always had folks that came in and were just like, I don't like craft beer. I'm just here with this group. I'm normally a Miller Lite drinker, and so we always wanted to have something. But then it took off not only with our customers, but with also our staff. And it started to be like, everyone's shift beer because it's, again, light and crisp. And for me, I mentioned earlier, but I have a very soft spot for Coors Banquet beer. And, I'm just like, man, you could buy it, or we could just try to make, our own version of what I love about Coors Banquet beer. So ours is a little more hoppy, kind of in our standard fashion, but it is corn, Pilsner malt, very lightly hopped. I think it's like 18 IBUs, right around 5%.
Yeah.
We do it in 6 and 12 packs, just kind of a crushable, and as the name implies, river beer. But a lot of what I built the brewery around was kind of our three core values, which are environmental stewardship, community stewardship and engagement, and then product quality innovation. So, we've operated a lab since almost day one. We do quite a few things here at the brewery to lessen our footprint. Things as simple as water reclamation on the brew house side, to as complex as, we've recently installed a CO2 recapture system that collects all the CO2 produced during fermentation, filters it, cleans it, takes it down to beverage grade, liquefies it back into holding tanks, and we're now able to use that in our process and kind of cut out that supply piece. So we're always looking for ways that we can lessen our impact. With River Beer, we give 2% of the sales of that beer every quarter to nonprofits and environmental organizations that are working specifically around waterways in Central Texas. Austin is a city on a river, San Marcos is a city on a river. Rivers are really important, obviously, to us in Central Texas, mostly drought-plagued. The last couple of months, I think all of our lakes are totally full now, finally. But
I've been here about 3 days, and it has rained every second of every day. It was 82 or 83 degrees when my plane landed on Sunday. By Monday, it was in the low 40s. I don't know, it's dogs and cats living together.
Right.
It's nuts. I don't know what's going on here.
Birds swimming, fish flying. Yeah.
It's been crazy.
You mentioned that you opened a new brewery in San Marcos. What are your growth plans for the next 3 to 5 years? Or I'm sure you've got some of those ideas going.
Yeah, definitely. So, first and foremost was really to kind of replace the capacity here and just move it down to San Marcos. So we have the ability through our 3-barrel pilot system to do some really fun experimental stuff, but really growing any of our seasonal, experimental, barrel-aged, all that has been very limited for us. So first and foremost is to move that capacity down to a much more efficient brew house, larger cellar, more efficient packaging line, more cold storage space, more storage space, all around. 7 years we haven't been able to really grow outside of Austin, but we have a lot of demand in the Houston area, Dallas, Fort Worth. The San Antonio launch, initially has been awesome. We just rolled draft out actually this week. So yeah, our plan is to, as we can control quality, we'll go as far and wide as we can. But first and foremost, that's really what that brewery is going to do, is let us make better beer, more innovative beer, more efficient product, and be able to get it out to a few more people than just our 50-mile radius here in Austin.
Do you guys do any kind of live music? It is Austin, for crying out loud.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I'll let Flo kind of speak to this. He's put together a few great things.
I've done a handful of shows here. Actually, 2 weeks from now, I'm putting together a little Ramones tribute with my brother and a couple friends of mine and a few other bands that are dear friends, actually, some of which are actually in the beer community, involved in the beer community. But this the music thing is definitely something that we've always been about. I think actually before I worked here, about 3 years ago, I played a show in that corner over here, and I think that was the reason why they stopped doing music inside, because we're a really, really loud rock band. And I remember playing it and being like, man, I feel bad for the bartenders and everyone. So I think the only music that we now have in here is like a lot softer, like bluegrass or like something that,
We'll do some
something
jazz,
with an acoustic,
blues,
yeah.
And it was brain melting loud in
It
here.
just bounces around in this
Because
room.
it's a big
much.
warehouse, 20-foot ceilings, everything echoes everywhere, and that was that's funny. That was quite a show for sure.
What's the next thing? What's the next thing to go on tap?
And we're rolling out right now year-round a brand new IPA called Lupulin Rodeo, which has been a really fun kind of project for us that we've been brewing on a smaller scale for a while, and it's now kind of rolled into our year-round portfolio. We've got some great placements with H-E-B, which is one of our biggest retail customers here. So we're in that process of going from having a silver can with a label wrapped around it to designing the full print on the can and going to the can manufacturer and dealing with that. And our focus right now is kind of head down on trying to squeeze as much beer out of here as we can until the San Marcos facility is open, and then we'll kind of shift our focus to the development of that property just east of here, and start playing around with a lot more stuff.
Do you have any other thoughts, questions?
No, I would just highly recommend, if anybody's in Austin, Texas, to drop into a retail store and pick up, was it Hayes County?
Hayes County.
Awesome beer.
Yeah, that is good.
Well,
that is
thanks.
good beer. All right, guys. I know that we interrupted a mad scientist's little episode in your lab back there for you to come out and do this for us, and you're probably eager to get back to that. But guys, it's been fun. I appreciate the invite. Have enjoyed talking to you. Love the beer. And with that, Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you guys for being here.
Text Miss Lily, and we'll see you next time.